Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Erin Kopek, and you have joined our higher level high notes. Thank you for tuning in this morning. We are working really hard this month to bring you valuable resources in this time. And so today, Dr. Carrie Birchill with North Star Coaching has joined us, and she will talk to us about leading through anxiety. So a few housekeeping things before we get started. The webinar will last about 30 minutes. And you all do have the option to ask questions in your question box in your GoToWebinar panel. You will be muted, but we do encourage you to interact. I know Carrie has some questions she'll be asking, and really look forward to hearing from you all and kind of how you're navigating through this as well. So thank you again. And let me introduce Carrie, a little bit about her. So with a focus on reflection and empowerment, Dr. Carrie Birchill explores how we spend our energy and we can influence others. Basically, she introduces easy to understand concepts that empower leaders and volunteers with the ultimate goal of significantly influencing service work in the community. As a highly regarded coach, facilitator, and leader, she has over 20 years of inspiring others to action. Carrie helps companies and individuals identify how they can grow the positive. Carrie has 2 published chapters in peer-reviewed books. She is the president of a consulting company, North Star Coaching. And I want to give Carrie kudos. We work with her on a leadership level here at higher level, and definitely recommend her work, and looking forward to the presentation today. So thank you, Carrie.
Well, thank you, Erin. What a warm invitation. All right, well, let's get started, everyone. I smiled when I got the invitation because this picture of this woman is so distraught, leading through anxiety, and then there's this like cherry picture of me in a yellow blazer. So we're going to try to fill that gap between what some of us might be feeling, or maybe people we know feeling that anxiety as we transition through unheralded time. So today's agenda is very simply to learn 4 strategies around how we can help lead through anxiety as leaders. And then another 3 as we talk about employees. I hear there's a little bit of feedback. I hope that we can manage that, Erin. I don't know if you're getting it on your end. Without further ado, though, let's use the question part of your screen and really identify in your own words, float me a couple words, what do you think causes anxiety? And we'll give a minute for this. There's lots of times when I'm going to ask questions, so I hope everyone's ready with their keyboard. Leading through anxiety. Let's just first identify what is anxiety and what do you think causes it? Let's blow this up here. I know you have some thoughts. Last time I did a webinar with the higher level, it took a little bit for the questions to actually load in our GoToWebinar, so I'll wait for a second. Fear of the unknown. Yeah, I see that in a few different people's comments here. Absolutely. That idea of we just don't know what's going to happen, which I think has all of us kind of on edge. It's funny as you're typing this in, the what if questions, uncertainty. My grandmother turned 100 last August, and I was talking to her the other day, and she was saying exactly what you're saying. Like, I've never lived through this before. I have no idea what's going to happen. And was really interesting for someone who's lived over a century to identify, you know, that change is hard. I had to tease her, like, come on, Grandma, what about the world wars? And she was saying this is just really entirely different for the reasons that you're identifying here. Unpredictable future, loss of control, absolutely. So the American Psychological Association defines anxiety as emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and or physical changes like increased blood pressure. So in my world of kind of helping culture and leaders grow and position themselves well, we sort of say that in a crisis, you really see people. You see kind of what they're made of. And sometimes you get some of the changes, physical changes, people's anger, they derail a little faster, or sometimes their feelings are a little more heightened as we go through all the things that you're talking about, this loss of control, health scares, yeah, the what if, someone mentioned earlier, the inability to control. All right, well, let's transition here to this slide that I love by GE, which is really talking about your wording exactly, that we think of all the what ifs and the variables that really contribute to our anxiety that are just hard to understand. And this GE model, I think, works really well. So we have this green box of stuff that's in our control, and obviously it's the smallest box. So frustrating. We have this little bit that we can control, some things we can influence, and some things that are simply out of our control, right? So social media, someone just posted, thanks Sherry, of really, we can't control the media, right? Well, what can we control? You know, some people limit the amount of time they spend on the media. Someone else was talking about the health scares. Well, certainly we can't really control how susceptible our body is to this, but we can control good hand hygiene. We can control, you know, what the CDC recommends in terms of healthy eating and exercise. So our anxiety is naturally going to increase when we live in this red or purple boxes, and the better we can stay in the green and manage those things we can control, just the better our anxiety is. Simple recipe and crazy hard to follow. I love this first tip here, actively listen to a point. So when people are feeling anxiety, we do want to actively listen to a point. So here's this cartoon. The more sentences you complete, the higher your score. The idea is to block the other guy's thoughts and express your own. That's how you win. Conversations aren't contests. Okay, point for you, but I'm still ahead. So we do want to obviously do the opposite of this cartoon, actively listen to a point. And I say to a point because there are times when we can listen so well that we actually add fuel to other people's fire. So let's kind of deconstruct active listening a little bit. On a very surface level, active listening is repeating. More advanced, you can paraphrase what people are saying. And more advanced from that even is reflecting. So we really want to help some of the end boxes here under reflecting of helping people increase their thinking and reasoning and rendering the message in our own words. So in that role as an active listener, you have a chance to mirror back to someone else what they're actually saying. And sometimes that ability or opportunity to actively listen really kind of creates ahas for people because they see themselves in how they're behaving. That's the real value of active listening. So when we actively listen to people, we kind of want to help them with an off-ramp of whatever has their anxiety super high. So I love this simple picture of a highway. You know, people can be really excited about the what ifs. So someone had commented in your answers to the earlier questions, health scares, right? What if I get this? What if I die? You know, that's the ultimate anxiety. And I can go down that highway and think about that fear and increase my anxiety out the wazoo. And as an active listener, I can help you recognize that, hey, you do have some fear around your health. What can you control with that? And really actively listen where you're getting and being empathetic and sympathetic to what they're talking about, and you're helping them merge off of that way of thinking. So the active listener really plays an important role in leading others through anxiety. So it kind of brings a question then. So, you know, what off-ramp do I pick? Where's the turning point of somebody? So I want to get your input on this. Here's another question and answer for you. So I was rounding on a team recently, and someone was obviously expressing a high degree of anxiety. And their one-liner to me was, my husband's being deployed tomorrow to New York City, and he's probably going to die of the COVID. I don't want to be here. And the people behind this person who said this were like, you know, they were looking at me like, Carrie, save me from this kind of, I don't want to be around this poison. This anxiety is just, it's contagious. Help us. And it had me thinking, so where is the merge, right? Where do I actively listen to this woman, identifying what her anxiety is, and where do I help her merge? So in the question answer, question part here, where do you think the turning point is? Like, I'm going to actively listen, and where do I bring her to another way of seeing that? This is a thinker question. So I want to actively listen to her, and then I want to help her redirect. You know, what does she control out of those things? We have the control, influence, and out of our control. So obviously, you know, we want to first talk through what is her anxiety, right? You know, my husband's being deployed. I look at the first 5 words of that statement that she made, and there's a chance to just actively listen on him being deployed. So what are the feelings behind that, right? She's going to be alone through this. Well, that's got to be a bit intimidating. I can see how that's really scary, you know, and you're worried about him dying of the COVID. Yeah, like these are real things. And the merge becomes, you know, getting her thinking away from he's going to die to, you know, what are some of the precautions that the military has to make sure that he's safe? You know, wow, that's such a great character that he has to really be brave enough to serve the country in this extraordinary time. You know, you must be really proud of him. How can we really focus on those feelings of being proud to manage some of that anxiety and keep it in check? So what are some stories that you've heard? We're going to apply this idea of kind of off-ramping people. So in a you know, a sentence or a few words, what are some stories you've heard around people's anxiety? I'll give you a minute to add your thoughts. Good. And I see a couple of people have added some thoughts here. Every time I click on that, it takes me out of the big screen, so bear with me as I figure that out. Yeah, so redirecting at the husband and what he's doing, that it's valid to feel that way. Yeah, Stephanie, absolutely. Thank you for your thoughts. Yeah, what's the percentage that he might, that he actually might pass away from that? Good. I really appreciate everyone kind of contributing their thoughts. I'm going to yo-yo a little bit here on going back and forth because that's the only way that I can read your questions and look through this. I should be able to. Okay, so we can decrease or eliminate these worries by accepting one simple fact: the things that we worry about rarely come true, right? And so there's a neat book that I read a while back called Radical Acceptance. If we kind of give ourselves pause to think about worst case scenario, it tends to just, you know, well, I can deal with that, whatever the worst case scenario is. So what's realistic and what's likely? You know, so being able to say to that New York, the wife of the New York person who was being deployed, you know, what are you worried about? And let's talk through the likelihood of what that's going to happen. Yeah, okay, so Stephanie brings up a good one here. So one story that she heard is, this is never going to go away, right? So we need to translate in that actively listening, right? So you're concerned that we're going to be in quarantine for a long time. Well, it's not just quarantine, it's the economy. Okay, so you're worried that the economy's not going to rebound, right? Help them be a mirror for what they're really worried about, and then help them with the off-ramp for that of, well, what are some other times in history where we've had really crazy things happen? Not saying that they're the same, but crazy things that happen, and lead people through some of that. Absolutely. Good. So really, this idea of actively listening to a point just begs the question, are we putting our energies in the right place? So as an active listener and leader, you have a special responsibility of helping people redirect where they're putting their energy so that they're putting them in the right place. I love this picture of Winnie the Pooh. All right, tip number 2, put words on it. So that definitely complements the active listening. So it seems that once people can put words on what is really triggering their anxiety, then they can wrestle with it. So that's the magic, right? Being able to really put words on what it is and then tackle it down. So thinking back to the person whose husband was being deployed, what was that feeling? Well, maybe she was angry about dealing with the COVID alone. So I might say, so, you know, are you feeling angry? And they might say, yeah, or they might say, no, I'm scared. Okay, you're scared. Whatever it is, help them identify. You don't have to be right. You just have to pitch something, and the other person will redirect you if you're not on point. Number 3, this is an important one for leaders, and I think we maybe don't implement it as much as we could. A moment away. So whoever is expressing high anxiety, give them permission to take a moment away. So as I describe this, type in the question area, what would a moment away look like where you work? So sometimes, you know, when I was rounding on that leader who was worried about her husband deploying, you could see her colleagues behind her were just like, take this person out of here, that negativity is contagious. And how powerful it would have been for her leader to recognize that and just very respectfully suggest a moment away. So what could a moment away really look like? Someone else has talked about healthcare workers really being afraid of giving it to their children, right? So even as a mom, being afraid, what does a moment away look like? I look at the gorgeous weather we're having in Southern Illinois today, and that moment away can just really be looking out the window and just breathing and letting yourself kind of regain some control over those emotions. Some facilities have, sidewalks around the building. Some people I know really love their lunches in their car, that kind of moment away. So as leaders, we need to honor people and respect their dignity with a moment away. I know that that leader who was concerned about her husband deploying did not feel proud of the way she was derailing in front of others. Like, it's okay to feel anxious. And we as leaders have a real responsibility to help people redirect some of that. Someone else is suggesting going for a walk. Absolutely. Or even go ahead and cry. Let the person kind of get it out. Pass them the Kleenex box. Those are all moments away. And then following that, if the person's unable to either just take a moment with some tears and regroup, or a 15-minute walk, then you have a responsibility as a leader to say, please, take some hours, go through a drive-through Starbucks, get something to eat, get away. And if they're not able to really re-engage in the work because their anxiety is just over the top, that's where we need to recommend some EAP assistance and really some hours away from the office, because that panic and anxiety is contagious. Once you have one person who's really derailing like that, you'll find other people quickly following suit. So in times of crisis like we're in now, as a leader, you really need to manage that anxiety. And part of it is respectfully taking a moment away. That's not a disciplinary thing. That's just a colleague to colleague respect. And you're really in that moment away, giving people a chance to self-reflect, respect their dignity enough to give them a chance to regroup themselves. The last thing is to tell a story. And the stories become an inspiration for other people to reflect and really think through some times when they've worked through something. So a good story conveys empathy, it pulls people out of a rut, and it creates some hope. So I actually went through a scrapbook that my mom made for me. This is me when I was 8, and I pull it up because when I was 8, I had a really scary experience that I found my way through. And by sharing this story, you can ask other people for stories that they share. So my story was, I was with my brother at my uncle's cattle ranch, and we were riding a horse, and the horse started bucking, and I remember grabbing my brother's intestines, like I could honestly feel them in my fingers. And I got bucked off, and the horse, when it landed on the pant leg fabric and barely missed my calf. I remember scooching back and pinning myself against the fence post and just shaking. My brother finally, gets off the horse and drags me in to tell my mom and aunt what happened. And what did they do? Made me get back on the horse right away, petrified. I leaned into the fear and found myself today really enjoying horses. I like feeding them, brushing them down, riding them. And that was a moment of pushing through some fear. So my sort of takeaway is leaning through that and into the fear to know that I have the strength to get on the other side of that. Innocuous, right? Not a real private, personal story, but one of persevering. When I asked another team recently what their stories were, someone talked about having an induction happen for her baby, and they were in and they were dressing her tummy, and her husband was outside the OR waiting to be able to be brought in, and she starts having a panic attack, just was completely alone and petrified. And the anesthesiologist said, okay, what do you need? And talked her through it. So her story was, now I know when I feel that heightened fear, I need to talk through it with someone. Great. Me and the horse thing, I just leaned into it. I just hunkered down and did it. She talks through, great, let's all learn how we deal with times of anxiety. So as a leader, think of your own stories and then engender other people to tell their stories. We're gonna skip that idea of just in the space of time here, but really do reflect on what your story is and how you can ask other people. So of course, leading through anxiety is one, leading the employees that we honor, and you may have an unofficial leadership role or official one. So those 4 tips are paramount. And then we're going to transition into caring for ourselves. So tip number 5 is self-care. Why is self-care critical? Well, we think of some examples, right? The tried and true airline thing, right? What do they always say? If there was a crash, put your mask on first and your kids second. This other one too is just a simple, peaceful picture of a dandelion, right? That dandelion has to grow and have some seeds to blow around for it to seed itself and to grow. So whether we're dandelions or on an airplane, we need to ask ourselves, are we putting ourselves in the right area? So here's the tip with self-care. Figure out what you need. Are you introverted? You need some alone time. Extroverted, you need to be with people. Thank you for joining the webinar. That helps do some of that extroverted stuff in this time of isolation. Figure out what you need and put in some structures to get it. Why? Because if you're not caring for yourself, you can't care for your family. You can't care for the people that you serve, your clients, your customers, your staff. Tip number 6 is family care, right? So if you can't care for yourself, then you can't care for your family. And if your family gets sick, then that's going to pull you away from whatever important things you're doing to help the community and the world get through this. So what does family care look like to you? There's lots of great examples here of starting our facilities with coloring mandalas, right? You can sit in a car and eat with others while you're enjoying healthy lunches. So those are some examples of self-care. And what about family care? What are some ingenious things that you're doing to keep your family connected? And that may be you with kids, it may be you with your parents, siblings. Give me some ideas in the question box around how you're managing family care. It's great to read some of these ideas. I think we're getting so creative as a society as we kind of manage some of this stuff. I know Friday night, my husband and I are joining some friends on a trivia night on Facebook. We're looking forward to that. Just creating some quality time together. Let's see what you're saying. Family care. There's some new apps I've heard about too that are really getting some attention. Gaming and that kind of thing. My mom turns 80 at the end of the month, and I told my siblings, we've got to figure out some online thing that we can do to honor her in this crazy time. So FaceTime with family. Thanks, Keely. Yeah, FaceTime, what a great invention, right? My family's in Canada, and boy, it's just a gift to have that FaceTime. What else are you doing? I weeded the yard yesterday with somebody on FaceTime as a sidebar. Yeah, I don't know what they thought of that experience, but it was fun for me to have company. What else are we doing for family care? All right, I'm going to move forward, but move back to your answers. I think it just takes a little bit for the computer to connect. So tip number 7 really loops back to some of the initial questions or thoughts you had around things that you can control and what kind of causes our anxiety. So it's really shifting our mindset from stopping the what if, because we think, what if I get it? What if I bring it to my kids? What if this never ends, right? These are natural anxieties that we all feel. So stopping the what if and asking yourself, how can I help? So that changes the shift from things out of my control, what if is completely out of my control, to how can I help, or things I can control. So that mind shift has a couple of really beneficial things, right? In part, it takes me out of the gutter. It brings me into that green square of things that I can control. It gives me something concrete to put my energy on. So that asks the question then, if you can help, you need to filter how you can help through tips 5 and 6. So does my helping support self-care? And does my helping support family care? So just because we can help doesn't mean that that's smart and wise, right? We want to filter it to make sure that it helps family time, and self-care time. I see Mary, thanks for adding Zoom meetings, right? Zoom does, I think, 40 minutes free. Is that right, Mary? Yeah, Zoom meetings are helpful. I was on a conference call the other day and we were laughing at how a week ago, none of us would have, or a month ago, none of us would have put the video on. But there were 8 colleagues from different cities across the nation and all of us just put on the video, right? So we're getting used to the Zoom thing. It helps us stay connected, you bet. So at the end, we'll have a chance for questions here. And I just really want you to think through, be beautiful. You know, be true to yourself. This anxiety stuff can really overcome us and take us through to places maybe that aren't really true to us, to being ourselves, where we are beautiful. All right, I'm gonna zoom us back here to the top and just talk about these 7 strategies again in summary, and really give you a chance to ask some questions around actively listening to a point, a moment away, tell a story, put words on it, self-care, family care, and how can you help, so long as they align with 5 and 6. This is a chance where we just have a few minutes left in our time together where we can really ask some questions or maybe dive deeper into one of those tips. I think it's always nice to wrap up with a little bit of reflection time ourselves. I love this. Somebody wrote, we've all heard what Mr. Rogers and his mother always told him. Something like, when in times of trouble, always look for the helpers. This is where the promise of a better day comes. Thanks, Sherry, for sharing that. Absolutely. What other questions or kind of takeaways do you have from today? We have a couple minutes yet. Just want to provide that space for you to get all of your needs met today. Definitely want you walking away feeling like you have some concrete strategies and some hope. I know we're not alone dealing with our anxiety, and that's completely okay to have anxiety. Absolutely. Just want to be there for each other and give us some things that we can control, some strategies to implement. All right, well, while people are wrapping up, I'm going to jump down to this final slide. So I'd love to stay connected with you, whether it's just a colleague to colleague processing stuff in times of COVID, or maybe there's work that I could do to contribute to your company now or after the COVID crisis ends. I really just want to serve the community and help us position ourselves where we can achieve our ambitious goals and really respond to the current state, the economy, the emotions, the people that we serve, the customers we have, meeting the needs, all of the messiness that's involved today. I'd love to stay connected with you. So my cell phone's on here, my website, my email. Feel free to reach out. And I see somebody asked, maybe we can discuss the implications of this working from home and how to connect. Absolutely. So one thing that I've heard, just in answer to Stephanie's questions before we wrap up there, is people really giving a space to ask how things are going. Now, this is awkward to talk about emotions online, right? 93% of our communication is nonverbal. So that feeling stuff we sort of miss, not being in the same room and feeling each other and reading those nonverbals face to face. So what helps is if you can actively go around the people on the call and give everyone a pointed space to talk about what's going on. And sometimes people are like, it's fine. Don't let people get away with the just it's fine answer. Ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say your anxiety is? You know, try to still create a safe enough question without being too pointed, but one where they have to answer, where you as a leader can get some more details on whether or not you need to follow up with a one-on-one call. Do they need a moment away? Is it time for a story? You can challenge people to come up with their own story of how they've, you know, worked through something that was anxiety provoking, and at the next call, ask people to share. So it's really being a little more pointed in your facilitation to get people to talk about how they're dealing with this stuff. You know, similar to what does self-care look like for you? You know, some of the very things that we did today on the webinar. What does self-care look like? What does family care look like? I know one team, they have posters up on what are you looking forward to doing when this is over? That's a fun focus and is future-based. people are talking about wanting nacho cheese from their favorite Mexican restaurant. It brings us forward. And so those are some tips, Stephanie, that will hopefully help you. I hear Erin has rejoined our call.
Hi there. Thank you, Carrie. Great information. So one thing I would like to add too, that's been, one of my favorite outside of the box activities during this time is, some of the live concerts that have been happening on Facebook. Just an opportunity to kind of, I guess, slow down a little bit. I know some people are joining virtual happy hours. I think it's going to change the way we do business and having virtual coffees. So I think it's overall, there is a silver lining, and I think we are going to become better at communication. I think one thing we can all do is just check in on each other, check in on your family, check in on friends, check in on your colleagues. One thing we've been trying to do is checking in on our clients and customers and candidates, and just making sure that we're a resource for them during this time, as this is all new to us too. So.
Yeah, we're definitely better together, Erin. Thanks for those thoughts.
All right, thank you, everyone. Well, we are trying to do this each week. Those of you that are with us. So if you're interested in hearing more about what we have coming up, you can email me directly at hello@higherlevel.com, and I'll make sure you all get on our email list, and you can get information that we're putting out during the month of April. So.
And I wonder too, Erin, if anybody has some ideas of specific content. So Stephanie's question around, how do we do this working from home? Like if you have a more pointed question, we could spend a whole webinar on strategies doing things from home. So really want to tailor whatever we're doing to support you. So be specific with your suggestions at the hello@higherlevel email.
Yes, please do. We're all ears, and we'll love to hear from you. So thank you again, and everybody have a good rest of your day.
Bye-bye.